Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Okay, so should be live on Facebook now. Hi, everyone out there, Facebook world, and on YouTube later. And today on Dog Q&A, we've got a guest with us who I'm going to let in now. Unmute Dana. Okay, Dana, if you're there, you can turn on your video now and we can start our chat.
I don't have the ability to turn my video on.
Okay,
it says, which is weird.
I can ask you to start it, but I don't think I can start it.
No, I'm seeing, did that work?
Let's see.
I'm seeing a little pop-up that says you're asking me, but then it says can't start video.
Oh, have you had that before?
Never.
Okay. Unmute. Waiting room.
Let me see.
I haven't had that one either. Every week I have a new thing, so.
I know, right?
Right.
Things that you think work don't. I'm gonna,
Do you want to go out and come back in? So everyone on Facebook, just bear with us. We're getting Dana's video on. As you know, every week I have a new technical thing to learn from, I call it. Yay, we did it. Oh, now I can't hear you. Let's see. We've got video and no sound. Let's see. And your microphone is unmuted on my end. However, I cannot hear you, which is, let's see, I'll make sure that everything is correct here.
take two.
Oh, there you are.
Okay, goodness.
And sound. Great.
Mercy me. Okay, here we go.
So everyone, welcome back to Dog Q&A. This is episode 21, and today we have Dana Brigman with us, who is going to talk to us today about pet nutrition. So Dana, if you would like to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started into the nutrition world, and you also do training as well, right?
Yeah, so hi everybody, I'm Dana Brigman. My business is the Canine Coach, and I got started in all of this when I left corporate America about 8 or 9 years ago, and had been doing a lot of fostering for Great Danes. And when I quote unquote retired from corporate America, I'm like, I don't want to do nothing. So I had a very difficult dog that I fostered and wound up adopting, who had what I would call non-aggression biting history. I mean, you would put him in the wrong scenario and he would bite people. But if things were well managed, he was an awesome dog. He became my demo dog as I moved into training. But he's the reason I got into training, because I went with him every single week during the foster care. And then after I adopted him, we went every week to training lessons. And it just led me down this path. As I started working on dog training myself, obviously seeing a ton of aggression cases, a ton of anxiety cases. And then my clients would call me a year or two after training and say, my dog died. And these would be really young dogs. And I I'm very emotional about all of these things. So I'm like, there's got to be something going on. Why are we losing so many dogs at such young ages? Why do so many have aggression? Why do so many have anxiety? I was seeing dogs sail out of 2-story windows with separation anxiety. And so I wound up looking into essential oils initially and love them, use them every day as everything that I do. But in one of those classes, one of the holistic veterinarians started talking about nutrition and the 5 element theory and how foods affect how our body feels, how we behave, our responses to all of those things. And, I can remember very distinctly hearing this notion of aggression lives in the liver, anxiety lives in the kidneys. And I thought, that sounds hokey to me. So I started really trying to dig into that a bit more. And I'm one of these that I'm not going to try something on my dogs or my client dogs that I haven't tried for myself. And I'll confess, nutrition for me personally is a big challenge. It's getting better, but there was a period of time that I would tell you, and some days still, my dogs eat better than I do now. But I started doing this liver cleanse with nutrition and essential oils and saw some pretty amazing results for myself. So then I started incorporating it into my training programs. At that time, I was doing board and train, and I would obviously get permission from the clients and say, this is the protocol that I'm going to follow, and this is what we're going to do, and began to see amazing results that seemed far more sustainable over time, meaning a year or so later, they weren't calling me back saying, we've regressed into some behavioral issues that need a tune up. Things seemed far more sustainable. Dogs were healthier, brighter, skin coat, the whole bit was just better all around. So that led me down a path of really starting to study canine nutrition. And I did get certified in canine nutrition several years ago. And back in the spring, Dogs Naturally was offering a free opportunity to take their raw certification specialist course. So I took that, knock on wood, knew most all of it anyway, but it was another opportunity to just really learn from somebody with a different perspective. So now everything that I do has a nutritional layer to it. As I talk to my clients about their pets' health, longevity, behavior, no matter what topic we're talking about, the wellness piece is layered into that with some pretty astonishing results.
And for those that don't know, Dogs Naturally is a great company. I always reference their website for, any holistic information I might need about dogs. How was it to take that course? And how was it being with that organization?
Class was tough. Again, I had already been certified in canine nutrition, which interestingly enough was rooted in kibble feeding. So that first class I took, I had a tough time with because I'm a raw dog feeder now. And to keep talking about kibble and all of that was a difficult conversation. But there was a lot of math in the raw feeding, right? And I think that's part of what turns a lot of people off from going to raw is that how do I source all of this stuff? Where do I find a butcher that's going to give me lung and heart and brain and whatever other organs? And then how do I calculate out all the ratios and keep that diet nutritionally balanced and so on? So that's what that class was all about, was all of that math and all of that balance, and where do you get your amino acids from, and making sure you've got the science behind a good balanced diet. So honestly, for me, I hate grocery shopping. I don't like grocery shopping for me. I'm doing more of it these days because we're not eating out as much. But when I started to feed my dogs raw, there were a couple of things about that. One is I didn't think I could afford it. And the other was I didn't want to source all of the ingredients, and I didn't want to have to calculate all that math all the time.
Because
So,
you have to research what goes into the diet, what nutrients they need, where to get them, how do you get these things, raw meats that you're not used to buying.
right. Yep. So I can definitely do those diets. I'm trying to turn up my volume so I can hear you just a little better. So bear with me.
Okay.
Got it. I can definitely do that. And many of my clients do that. We help them come up with a balanced diet. But for me, that I had been listening to Wendy Volhard, who is, I don't know if any of you know of her, but she is a longtime trainer. She and her husband have several books about training. If you've ever heard about temperament testing, Wendy and her husband were developers of temperament tests. And she started creating this food about 40 years ago. And I remember her speaking at a trainers conference, and I was hearing this 5-element theory stuff and how dogs in the UK were not suffering with bloat like our Danes and big dogs here do in the US. And it all sounded wildly fascinating, but it just sort of tucked in the back of my brain, and I went on about my business until I had a dog named Bentley who came to me for training. And Bentley had been to puppy preschool, to group class, private one-on-ones, the whole bit, and was really struggling to learn. And in fact, had a little bit of aggression in his behavior. Honestly, I blamed his mother. She was kind of difficult to work with, human to human. And I thought, she's just not working with Bentley. She's got, the expectations are wrong, whatever. And I really put a lot of the burden on her until Bentley came to live with me. And I had him for about 3 weeks and just made zero progress. So I was preparing to send him home. And when I do that, I write up a summary of what we've been working on. Not that they haven't heard from me during the whole process, but I write it all down with a game plan, a strategy for them to move forward. Just a summary of those training programs. As I was writing that up, I thought, there's got to be something more. And this was before I was certified in the training, in the nutrition. Wendy was in the back of my head going, 5-element theory, 5-element theory. And so I pulled out Wendy's notes from my conference, and Bentley checked all those boxes: difficulty learning, difficult settling, seeking out cool places to lay, all of the factors. And so I told his owner, I said, look, I can't diagnose this, but this is my theory. And we actually took him to a holistic veterinarian the very next week, who said I was right. We changed his diet. So he was eating a dry kibble that was made of bison. She said, take him off of that. We put him on a white fish diet. He was getting blueberries, cantaloupe, all these cucumbers, all these things that are said to be cooling foods. And within a week, I kid you not, all the training turned on. Bentley was like, it's like it just was magic. And so that was a big turning point for me to actually see it work. And again, that's part of what was leading me down this path of taking on nutrition into my own approach to training and wellness. So I think I might have diverted off the path of that, but that was an important point to make.
There's no path. We're on the path, wherever.
It's always a journey.
Yes. And when you said the cooling foods, I did some research with my anxious reactive dog. And that was one of the things that came up was chicken is a hot food.
Absolutely.
And how much that is in everything. And for those that don't know, the hot food are things that contribute to, and maybe you can explain the science behind it, but it contributes to anxiety and those types of reactions.
Well, it's an inflammatory food. It's very high in omega-6. And when we talk about omegas, we often think omega-3 and don't realize how much omega-6 is really going into the body. And the more omega-6 that goes in, the more omega-3 we actually need. And so chicken is said to be an inflammatory food, a hot food. And if we think about sort of the, as Dr. Nancy Brandt calls it, the constitution of the body, we either are neutral, we're hot, or we're cool. And so, I think about like my mother, she is never warm, never warm. And it can be 100 degrees outside and she's got a sweater on, right? She is a cool entity. I, on the other hand, am a hot entity. If I think about dogs that are hot-headed, quick to fly off the handle, have red, hot, itchy skin all the time, or even seasonally in some cases, but those are inflammatory. That's heat in the body that has to come out in some way. The ways it comes out is allergies, aggression, attitude, this hot-headedness that I talk about, and in many cases, anxiety. So when I get those calls for even behavioral cases, chicken's the first thing to go, the first thing to go out of there. And we start looking at foods that will cool a naturally heated body. And we use cooling foods to bring us back to neutral because we don't want to shift to being a cold entity. Right? We're trying to pull down to neutral, and then we might be able to ebb and flow back into the variances of foods and still keep that neutral body.
And you mentioned whitefish, which I know is a cooling food. And that's one that my reactive dog is very drawn to. And I always thought, oh, he's a husky. That's why he likes fish.
Dogs will tell you, right? I mean, and, so I don't believe there's such a thing as a finicky dog, right? They might look at what you're putting in the bowl and go, that's not going to agree with me. Much like the way I think about eating certain foods, I know they don't settle well with me, right? Our dogs know that too. And we don't often pick up on it.
Yeah.
Because, and I keep looking as if there's a bowl out there, because a couple of days later, they might skip a meal or two and then they're going to eat that food. Well, they got to eat something. So no dog is going to starve himself to death if something is presented. But if they're turning up their nose at what's there, or they're not eating it regularly, there is something about that is not quite the right makeup for them. So, when we see dogs that love things like watermelon, cantaloupe, cucumbers, white fish, all of those things are cooling foods. So is turkey, interestingly enough. Even though turkey falls in the category of poultry, it is not the same inflammatory response that chicken would be.
That's interesting.
It really is. But we can look at duck, we can look at rabbit. Interestingly, a lot of people who have dogs with allergies talk about moving to things like novel proteins, and they'll feed their dog kangaroo. Well, guess what? Kangaroo is a hot protein. So now, are we really, are we really fixing that problem? And the short answer is maybe not. So we really have to look closely at each individual and not just sort of guess at it. I mean, it's a trial and error in many respects, but we have to really think about, are we doing the right things for each individual animal?
Yeah, there's a lot in the marketing, because the companies just want to sell the product.
Sure.
So, bison, have this exotic food in your dog's diet, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's sort of like reading all natural, healthy, on a package of something.
Yeah.
Like, well, if it's in a package,
right? Nothing.
Right.
There was one natural ingredient once upon a time before it was processed, and they can call it a natural food.
Right, right. So the big thing I hear from people when I suggest moving to a cleaner diet for their dog, shall we say, is cost. That's a big one.
Yeah.
What do you say to people who are in that boat? Like you mentioned, you didn't think you could afford it. What do you say to that?
Yeah. So I avoided it because I was feeding Great Danes at the time. I mean, that's a whole lot of food, right? I had 7 of them.
Oh my gosh.
So that's a whole lot of food. But I sat down one day and said, all right, I'm going to figure this out. And I looked at it at a cost per bowl, right? How much more per bowl is it? And then what have I been able to offset, or what do I anticipate being able to offset in terms of cost? And for me and many of my clients, every single one of my clients has come back and said, it is a little more expensive, not significantly, but so worth it. We've been able to eliminate pharmaceutical shots for allergies. And I'm not going to name names of those brands, but there are 2 major shots for allergies that have their own set of side effects and risks and problems. And food alone has taken care of it in most cases. Dogs need fewer baths. We're seeing the vet far less often. I have a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old miniature dachshund. And when they go, we get blood work, the senior panel blood work or whatnot. And he's like, these dogs, they're as healthy as they can be. So, can I tell you I have prevented disease? Who among us knows that for sure? But I'm certainly not going to the vet with joint issues, digestive issues. We don't have cancer. We don't have any of those things. So to me, that is a significant value. And I root the benefit and the value of that in the nutrition going into my dog's body and the clean products that we use every day.
So what, besides food, what else have you changed with your dog's care that you think contributed?
So years ago, we started down this path of essential oils. Can we talk about oils here?
Yes, I love oils.
So that's a big one. So there was one day as I was working through all of this learning that I was doing, I also got certified in animal aromatherapy. That was a big, lovely topic. And I'm fascinated by it. I started down that path because of my dogs with anxiety, the dogs selling out of 2-story windows with separation anxiety, and the dogs with aggression. That's where I'm like, there's got to be something I can do. So I started learning about that. But in one of the classes that I was taking, they were talking about all of the products that we use. And you guys can go out to my YouTube channel if you want. There's a video out there about your dog's grooming products, for example, and what all is in them that you should ask your groomer about, and maybe take your own shampoo to the groomer. But one day I literally walked under my kitchen sink and cleaned out everything and just chucked it in. I said, I don't want this in my house anymore for my dogs or me. And interestingly, that's one of the things that a lot of my clients who have dogs with allergies challenge me the most on is the products that are in our home, and even the products that women or people or children put on our own bodies and how that might affect our dog. So we went completely natural in the house, in the yard, everywhere. Now, granted, neighbors don't necessarily do the same thing. So, if I take my dogs outside or for a walk, and my neighborhood has sprayed for mosquitoes every single week this summer. So we do sort of an end of summer dietary cleanse. It's based largely on the Gene Dodds liver cleansing diet, but I layer in my essential oils. I bring homeopathy in periodically. So we're not using medications. We're using as many natural products as we can for everyday issues, supportive issues. Like my two seniors, they get essential oils in their food every single day. And I think that that's a big benefit to them. But then, like I said, I'll also do these dietary cleanses or these nutritional cleanses. And then they get the raindrop. My seniors get it at least once a month. My other dog, maybe quarterly. I get the benefit of doing it on them for me as well. So that's a plus. But yeah, we do all those things.
Yeah, I had a raindrop technique done to myself last year, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. And I saw a demonstration of that on a dog at the
conference,
Big Pets and Oils conference. Yes. And so for those who don't know what that is, it's sort of an infusion of a lot of oils into different parts of the body of yourself or your pet. And, for people who think that's toxic, I always say there are oils out there that are not pure and have toxins in them. And yes, those are toxic, but I think I see in the background, you've got Young Living.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I use. And that is the purest oil you can buy. And, I think I tell people what you hear in the news is news because it's unusual. You have to do your own research and figure out, like I did my research and figured out Young Living is the purest oil. And after using it, I learned, oh, this is not just hooey. This is legitimate stuff happening in the body because it's literally just plants in a bottle.
Yeah. So you talk about the volume of oils going on a raindrop. This little photo is he's 17 now. This is my favorite photo of all time. And I took that picture and then a friend painted it for me. But that's Howie. He's 17 years old. So he's a little guy. He's 13 pounds. The raindrop consists of 9 different essential oils. And if we do the feet, the legs, and the back, that's 9 times about, I would say there's probably 4 drops on his back, 1 on the legs and the feet. That's a whole lot of oil, right? That's at least, 50 some drops of essential oil? And people are saying, you should only use 1 drop or you got to dilute it. And I say that snarkiness because we panic about a lot of stuff, right? Dilution is a big deal, is very important, and sometimes less is more, depending on the purpose and the intent of what you're doing. But for the raindrop, because it's sort of this one-time thing for a period of time, and the purpose and the intent and the selection of the specific oils used. So that touches every system of the body. 50 some drops. He walked around here like a happy man Friday afternoon. He was like, I feel good. And I love that. I love that happens,
Yeah, it's amazing that it can affect every system of the body so much.
Exactly.
And so as far as getting back to feeding a holistic, nutritionally based diet for your dog, I try to give people options because I always say, until the house is on fire, nothing's going to change. So until you got your own fearful dog with aggression, you didn't need that yet. But now you're in this new situation going, something's different. When I get most of my training calls, it's because we've had this kind of dog our whole life. Now we have this kind for the first time. We don't know what to do.
Right.
So what kind of options can you give people as far as feeding their dog?
Yep, great question. So, and I do the same thing with all of my clients because they're all in different places. And if I came at them with oils and homeopathy and food changes all at the same time, their heads would explode and they would stop listening, right?
Mhm.
So, for the folks that are not ready to move into either a home prepared or raw type diet, they're going to stay in kibble world. I'm like, at least upgrade your kibble to something above the middle row of the local pet retailer, right? Because when you go in those stores, they are aligned in order of their quality. I don't know if most people realize that, but when you walk in, they've got them set up so that the cheaper stuff is all together, the mid-grade, and then the higher end. But even in these mega retailers, you're not going to get the higher end quality that you would get in like a local boutique.
Mhm.
So upgrade your kibble where you can. From there, I think every kibble feeder needs to add 4 primary things to their dog's diet. Omega-3, and that needs to be from a reliable, reputable, sustainable resource, an environmentally friendly resource, ideally a marine-based product. Now, if your dog's allergic to fish, a lot of people say can't feed that, but it's not necessarily true because it's just like when we talk about essential oils and plants, different constituents do different things.
Mhm.
So omega-3, digestive enzyme to help your dog absorb as much nutrition as possible from their diet, a good probiotic, keep that gut health moving along, functioning happily, and a good multivitamin mineral supplement.
Mhm.
So you asked me about cost a minute ago. There are 4 additional costs to the kibble food that I don't have because they're built into my food.
Mhm.
Makes sense?
Mhm.
But if you're going to feed kibble, upgrade the food quality with those ingredients first. And then you can look at, of course, things like adding a whole egg, some spinach, broccoli, kale, sweet potato. You can look at improving the nutritional value of the bowl by adding whole food ingredients.
Mhm.
Now, if you fall in the category of sort of these purists in the raw feeding community that your dog will never eat vegetables or never eat fruits, that's just it's not wrong, but it's not necessarily a requirement to say your dog can't have them. They will extract out vitamins and minerals from those foods. And that's an affordable way to get a boost of vitamins and minerals into your dog's diet. I would not start adding just chunks of raw meat on a regular basis to a kibble fed diet because we have the potential then of throwing things out of balance, meaning meat goes in with its phosphorus. And if it doesn't have the bone associated with the meat that it came from, we could over time create a phosphorus calcium imbalance. There's a ratio that needs to be kept in mind. Remember, I told you food is math. And if we do that long enough, we now could be creating a calcium deficiency, which is not necessarily a great option.
Mhm.
So if we're looking at adding things to the bowl, think of it being maybe no more than about 10% of your dog's total portion of food. Does that make
So if
sense?
someone were to want to feed the best thing possible, spare no expense, what do you recommend to those people?
A good butcher and like a whole food source of meat, organ, bone, the whole bit from a real animal. From a real animal.
And do you add other things to that?
You really would not have to, unless your dog is, aging and showing signs of some sort of deficiency or inability to absorb nutrient or whatever those things might be. People call me all the time and say, nothing has changed. My dog has allergies, or my dog's getting digestive issues, or my dog has a UTI, or whatever it may be, and nothing has changed. I'm like, yes, it is. Yes, something has changed. He's older today than he was yesterday, right? And so we have to look at how is the body able to, if we are feeding the same thing day after day after day after day, what's happening within the body that we cannot see until it starts to present some of these more visible signs.
Mm-hmm.
So to your question about the best there is, in my opinion, and the food that I selected is called Volhard Dog Nutrition. It is a dehydrated base mix of food that has all the vitamins, minerals, nutrients, digestive enzymes, omega, probiotic, all of that from whole food sources in a dehydrated form, to which I add fresh, raw, or lightly cooked protein to each meal. So most of the time we do some sort of muscle meat, ground beef, turkey, pork, whatever. One day a week we do a fish day. And then one day a week we do a cottage cheese or whole milk yogurt day. The fish day is a big benefit for omega, but the fish day and the dairy day are a great way to give the digestive system a little time off the clock from having to process all that rich red meat, right? To settle down, to relax a little bit, and to get a little bit of relief from that. We also periodically do fasting, where we skip an entire meal or an entire day, and in turn, perhaps do a raw meaty bone, right? So they've got something to do, occupy their little brains, because my dachshunds will come at 5 o'clock and go, hey, lady, it's time to eat. So I can give them something to occupy that time, but not give them these big meals that they need. So that also reminds me, when you talk about the cost and looking at it per bowl, my dogs eat far less food in a in a raw diet than they do in a kibble diet. My dachshunds, 13 and 15 pounds, they might eat, it's probably less than a quarter cup of food each twice a day. My mother when I first shifted to this food, she's like, you're starving them. I'm like, no, no. And in comparison, Poppy, my pit bull, she's about 50 pounds, feeding her, and I'm a skeptic when it comes to all this stuff. You mentioned the Young Living. I tried multiple brands. I wanted to compare. When I do this with food, I compared different foods. So I tried a base mix of food from a different vendor, to which I added my protein. I would have had to feed Poppy more food from that vendor than I do now, just to keep her weight up because of her athleticism. So it's not apples to apples in most cases. There are a variety of different things that come into play that factor into the cost. So even though their price point per pound of food was less and their shipping was free at the time, now our shipping, but anyway, I would have had to increase her food significantly, which put me at no savings at all.
Yeah, I've noticed that even with people food, when I eat clean,
Mhm.
no processed food and all of that, and do a fast day once a week with vegetable juice or whatever,
Right.
I feel great and I need a lot less food.
Yes,
And I've
exactly.
noticed even with dog kibble, the amount on the bag is, I find, to be way more than a dog actually needs, even
Right.
with kibble.
Yeah.
So, if if your dog's eating clean, I could imagine that's cut way down
Right.
from even
Right.
that.
Well, it's to the kibble manufacturer's advantage for your dog to eat more than they should, right? Because then you're going to buy it more frequently.
Hmm.
Yeah, but back to the question we were talking about. So if not doing a raw type, so I call mine a modified raw. The meat is raw, everything else has been dehydrated.
Hmm.
And then you can do a home prepared meal. So even if we did a crock pot meal, right, where you make these big batches of it on the weekend and put it in the freezer for the next 2 or 3 weeks, that's fine. It's still far healthier than what we get out of any kibble at any grade. But
And when you mentioned doing a fish day and a yogurt day or cottage cheese,
yep,
is it important which day those are on in the week of feeding?
no, not
Just
really.
one of the days.
Yeah, I do my fish day on the day before trash day.
That's
so,
good.
so I don't have to keep that around for a while.
Right. Especially in the summer.
Exactly. But no, rotating our dogs' foods, rotating their proteins, it is a great way to vary amino acid sources, vitamin mineral sources. Rotation is a good thing. So even if you're a kibble feeder, rotating your dog's protein within brand periodically is a good option. Sticking within brand is going to help minimize the digestive upset we often see, but you can also do that with your essential oils and a good probiotic, right? But some people will even tell you to rotate brands periodically because apples are not apples, and you're going to get a different makeup of the vitamin mineral mix and the amino acids and the basics that are in those foods, and keep your dog's body a little bit challenged to process and to figure it all out and to go, okay, I am not in a rut. I actually have to work here a little bit to process these things that are coming through.
Yeah, that's, I've noticed the higher the quality of dog food being fed, the less issues in changing it within
Right.
that range of food.
Yeah, I have, and that is one of the top questions my clients ask me when I talk about rotating their dog's protein or changing into the Volhard diet. They're like, "Are we going to have a mess for the next couple of days?" And I said, "You should not."
Yeah.
Now, if part of the reason we're working on food is because your dog's digestive system is a disaster right now, we're going to slow that transition, right? We're not going to make a quick one. Because the body actually has to heal. It didn't get unwell yesterday in most cases, so it's not going to get better tomorrow. It's going to take some time. And if we're dealing with things like serious chronic allergies, we may actually see it get worse before it gets better. Because now you're putting in all this great nutrient and the body goes, what just happened? I don't know what to do with all of this. And all of the stuff that it has been holding on to, and it has those things, those bad things get stored in the fat and the cells of our bodies. And so when we start pushing in good things, those are going to get pushed out. We may see allergies flare up worse than ever before, which is why I say to all of my clients who are coming to me with allergies, let's talk about some essential oils and lotions and potions that we can use topically to soothe while this is taking place. so that you as the parent don't panic and go, oh my God, my dog's miserable, because they are going to be.
Mhm.
You know, and then a lot of people would look at that if I don't educate them up front and say, my dog's allergic to this food because we've had this big flare up. No, let's work through the process, let's control it and get to the other side. And that may take anywhere from 1 to 6 months, depending on how bad the situation was before we got started.
Yeah, it's so funny how, well, most people want the quick solution.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to wait. We don't want to have a
Right.
process. But when you deal holistically with things, you're changing the root of the problem
Right.
so that you have the long-term good effects,
Right. And
and
more effects than the one medication or the one
right.
allergy shot is going to offer you. And for those who don't know, go read up on those allergy shots a little bit. I have a copy of his article, but Dr. Faulkner, who's a naturopath for animals, talks about one of the allergy shots, and he calls it the dark side, because basically it's a neuroinhibitor
Mm.
that tricks your dog's brain into believing it simply does not itch. It is not addressing the root cause. It is telling your dog's brain, don't know about that.
Mhm.
Just it's not happening. It's not happening in your body. So the dog doesn't respond. And yet what's happening at the core of the digestive system, the inflammation, which is one of the core sources of all pain and disease, inflammation's a bad thing in the body, is still present.
And that's your body's signal saying,
Right.
something's wrong, help me.
Right.
But instead of helping, we have a Band-Aid to mask it and cover it up. And
Exactly.
that's tough. Now,
yeah, that Band-Aid is actually changing the chemical makeup of your dog's brain. That does not appeal to me. I'm not going to let that happen.
no. And one of the studies that one of the holistic vets talked about at this Pets and Oils conference was the cancer rate in golden retrievers specifically. Their lifespan used to be 17 years.
Yeah.
And now it's 8 or 9.
Right.
And that's normal. And the cancer rate in dogs is astronomical now.
It's over 50%. It's expected that somewhere slightly above 50% of every dog on the planet today will experience cancer.
I mean, that's crazy.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the word "that's normal." It's not normal, right? And that was one of the things that for me years ago, when I kept saying, why are my clients calling me and telling me their dog is sick or has died? And it's 5. Why does my Great Dane die of dilated cardiomyopathy at age of 6? And people tell me that's normal. It's not normal, right? And so the dilated cardiomyopathy, you may recall that whole topic too. Grain-free food is the cause of all of this heart disease in these studies. And so many, oh my God, my head exploded. So many trainers that I know were advising their clients to go back to a grain-based food. Really low quality foods, of which corn was the number 1 ingredient. And veterinarians started doing the same thing. And then there are people, holistic vets that I follow. I know you know many of them as well. Others, Dogs Naturally, going, time out. That's not, no. And now we've seen sort of a 180 on that topic, right? And we're waiting on the FDA to basically say, yeah, we screwed up, we were wrong. Because taurine is the root cause of that. A taurine deficiency is really what that was all about. And taurine is found in meat. It was never found in grain. But what happened And there's a podcast, there's a YouTube on my side if anybody wants to go watch Dr. Barb Fox talk about this. But basically what happened is when they took out the grains, which is such a large volume of the total food, they substituted in other plant material, which increased the protein count. Right? So if I'm supposed to get my taurine from my protein source, and now my protein source is less because I've got more protein coming in plants, guess where my taurine went? Down. Right? So we offset the protein and mixed up a new ratio in all this plant material like soy and peas, and you listen, y'all, if you have not learned how to read your dog food label, go do it today. Whether it is a canned food or a dry food. And I have a blog post on my website that tells you how to do it. You're going to see meat first these days. Marketing wised up, meat first. And so we look at that and go, oh yeah, there's chicken in here. Oh yeah, there's beef. Read the rest of the label, because what many of them start to do is break apart pea starch, pea protein, pea fiber, pea whatever. Well, guess what? That's still all a pea, right? It's just the constituents of a pea, right? And you have to add all that back together to figure out how much carbohydrate is in your dog's food. And then you've seen some of these marketings, and it's like with blueberries and pumpkin, which is one of, they're not marketed in the same way anymore, but it used to say with blueberries and pumpkin. And if you guys are paying attention, you know which one I'm talking about. You go look at that bag, it is so low on the ingredient list that they waved a blueberry at the bag and said it's in there. It's not, I promise you, there's nothing nutrient about all those blueberries and pumpkins they're showing you on that bag. They are not in there.
Like the sweet potato chips in the store for people, it's corn and then some sweet potato powder.
Right.
You know, but that's the marketing.
That's right.
What do people need to look for on the label specifically? Maybe a few things, and things to look for that you don't want to see.
Oh, that's quite the list. And so
Yes.
I really would, and maybe just save all of us a little time, go out to my website. May I give the website name?
Absolutely. And I'm going to post a link to it too.
Okay. It's K9, letter K, number 9, coach.dog, D-O-G, / well-fed canine. And there's a whole nutrition section out there that's blog articles about what can I add to my bowl? What about this taurine deficiency? But there's a couple of them on how to read the dog food label and what should you be looking for, because we need to look for meat. We need to figure out how much carbohydrate is in that bag. And guess what? They don't list it. You have to do a little bit of math, a little subtraction. And, but then you're going to look for, where are the vitamins and minerals coming from? Most of them are coming from synthetic sources. If you see them added, like added vitamin D, added vitamin E, whatever, it was not from the food. It was from an addition, a supplement, and it's probably synthetic, which means your dog is not going to absorb it well. And most of it's coming out the back end, which is why a good digestive enzyme might be helpful, right? So that article is probably a good couple pages long. So take a minute, scan through it, print it out and go line by line with your dog food. And you're going to go, oh goodness, I maybe need to make some changes.
Right. Yeah, I would love to post links to your blog, your website, all this information.
Yeah.
So good.
And I'm happy to chat with anybody that is thinking about moving to a food like the Volhard. If you want to do that, call me. I'll answer whatever questions you have. I have another section out there that is a ton of information about that food in particular. Anybody that wants to order that food, or any of the supplements that Volhard has, or any of the treats that are out there, I'll give you a coupon code today. It's well-fed K9 take 5, the number 5, and that'll give you 5% off of your first purchase.
That's great.
So, but yeah, my website is shifting gears, and has been for a little while now, into wellness, which for me is nutrition, oils, and behavior, far more than it talks about training.
That's great.
Yeah.
Do you find, are you finding resistance for people into moving that direction?
Yeah, quite a lot. And some of them, it takes a while to come around. Some of them never do. And I have to go back to sort of where I was when I heard Wendy talking years ago about the foods, and other people talking about the raw diet, and in the back of my head going, I can't.
Right.
So I try to be patient. I try to give them options. Well, if you're not going to go this route, let's at least talk about the 4 primary things I think you need to add to your kibble. But yeah, a lot of people are like, they don't believe it. And like many things, we have to see it to believe it, which often, unfortunately, means we have waited until our dog or ourselves are in some level of pain or severe health crisis before we take a new action. And then they're desperate. Then I'll try anything. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, it's way past time we should have made a change.
Yeah, very few people come to me for training when their puppy is 8 weeks old, when we can do a whole lot during the critical period, versus my dog's 3 now, and all these things have been escalating over time, and now he bit somebody or a dog, or
Yep, I get those phone calls all the time, and they have a hard time when I say, what does your dog eat? They're like, they don't necessarily see the relevance of that. And for me, that's a big portion of the conversation. But I also talk about vaccines. When was your dog vaccinated? Last week, last month, and suddenly we have a new behavior. Suddenly we're an anxious dog, a fearful dog, an insecure dog, a dog with an attitude. People don't necessarily buy into the notion of vaccinosis. I am not anti-vaccine. I am anti-over vaccination, which in my head's a very different conversation. But when we talk about doing this liver cleanse, which is a nutritional component with essential oils and supplements, aggression lives in the liver, anxiety lives in the kidneys. And I have to take that into consideration. What affects our liver? Environmental toxins, heavy metals, food, all of that. And so I have this conversation with all of my clients, and sometimes they look at me like I've got 4 heads, like just train the dog. I'm like, it's not that simple. And it used to be for me, right? And I have trainers that argue with me or dismiss me every single day, going, just train the dog. Just train the dog. Train him out of it. And again, that's where I was. That's where I started, because I didn't know anything about the rest of this stuff. And it wasn't until I started layering in these pieces that I saw my training improve, better results, faster results, longer sustainable results, without the regression of having to go back and tune it all up again. Do you know what I mean?
Long lasting results.
Yeah. So a lot of clients, they're like, we just want the training. And I'm like, okay. And we'll go. And I keep plugging away, keep plugging away and talking to them about longevity and their pet's health. And it may be that they wait until they have a crisis before they call me back and
Mhm.
are ready to change.
Yeah, it's the same with training too, with, we want everything in one session.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can start, we can open the box
Yeah.
and see what we can talk about, and but the more we meet together, the more we can delve into the actual problem, and then the
Yeah.
more we can address the root of the problem.
Yeah. And sometimes, maybe more often than not, the root is not what the client thought it was.
Yeah. And sometimes even as the trainer, I don't see it until we're into session 2
Right.
or 3, and then I see more of the problem.
Yeah.
Then,
Can I give you an example of that? It has just been a couple
Yeah.
months ago that I experienced this. Clients were referred to me from Charlotte. That's a 4-hour drive to get here.
Hmm.
And they came, they spent the weekend here. And thank goodness that they did, because we had talked about a lot of things on the phone. They were working through the food, the vaccinosis cleanse, and all the things that came with that. And when they got here, they brought a dog that was very nervous, very insecure. But he had been to multiple trainers prior to coming to me for this evaluation. And most people would have given up. Most people would not have taken the next step to come see somebody like me, but they did. This dog was very obedient. I mean, he did everything that they asked him to do. But what I noticed over having, spent hours with them over the course of 3 or 4 days was this dog never turned his mind off.
Hmm.
He never could relax. He never could settle down. It was like one eye was open, waiting on the next command, because if he knew if he missed the command, there would be a punishment associated with that. Now, don't misunderstand. I move into all 4 quadrants of the training sometimes, right? But he was so overtrained that he was afraid to miss a command, right? He was afraid to make a mistake. And like when they would get him out of the car, he would sit, but he would sit and vibrate. Like, wow, what's coming next? I don't know what's coming next, but I got to hold this command. And we sometimes when I'm doing training, I'm like, let's just wait. Let's wait him out and see how long this takes for him to decompress. And he never did.
Wow.
He never did. And I'm looking at my house because we brought him in and put him on the place command in front of my fireplace. And he would sit there. But most dogs, if you put them on place, they're like, okay, I'm gonna be here for a while, and they settle in and they're ready to take a little siesta, right? He was alert. He watched the whole time we talked and the things that we were doing, and he never was able to decompress his mind and relax. And I'm like, that's the problem. He is so wrapped around the axle, he does not know how to relax, and that's going to get him in trouble. So we did the liver cleanse, the vaccinosis work, essential oils, the whole bit, and the layers started. It's not overnight, but the layers started to peel away. Yeah. He didn't need more training. He needed help.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, Dana, this has been so insightful. I'm so glad you were able to do this. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I'm going to post links to your website and anything else you think, just send those over to me and I'll put those in.
Okay, we'll do.
I love that. All right.
Were there any questions in the event?
I don't see any. I think because I moved, I haven't refreshed it, it looks like. So let me make sure. Let me check the refreshing here. I didn't see. Okay, let me make sure. Well, no questions on the Facebook Live. So yeah, I might get some afterwards. And if so, I can always send them to you and refer people on for sure.
Absolutely. Happy to chat with anybody. Yeah. I'm always open to like an initial, what I call the initial inquiry is always free. So feel free to send them my way, or if you have clients you need some additional consult with, I'm happy to talk to you too.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, thanks so much,
You're
Dana.
welcome. Have a great
All right.
weekend. Take care.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.